This is legislative branch. What we're going to look at today, ladies and gentlemen, is discussing one of the big three branches of the United States government and some of the basic ideas that are qualifications to be a part of the legislative branch, and then the powers that you basically have once you are in the legislative branch therein. Okay, so we're going to break down one of the big three branches called the legislative branch in this particular assignment. So some of the key things to look at, folks, and just to kind of basically understand, at least in a couple different ways, with some key vocabulary terms, is Congress. Congress is made up of two sections: the House of Representatives and the Senate. In total, there are 535 members of Congress, 435 members of the House, 100 members of the Senate we'll talk about. We call Congress what's called bicameral. We call these two sections chambers. The Senate is the upper chamber, the House is the lower chamber. We call it bicameral because it's made up of two sections, which is the bipart, and then cameral, which basically look at the different areas of overall. And each one of these are enumerated, which means a power that is specifically written in Congress, meaning you can see this written in the Constitution for Congress word for word. Then there are powers that are implied at the exact same time, meaning you can't read this word for word and says that's what Congress and the legislative branch can do, but it is understood or implied as such. So here's the first thing, guys, we'll look at just to kind of go on is this virtual tour where you click on this particular link and you can see just a couple of different things as far as right here. This is when people were looking at the different places and everything else that goes into building it. And you can look at all of these different ideas and all this different stuff that you might want to specifically, and you can play around with that without too many issues there at the exact same point. All right, so again, guys, the structure of Congress is broken up into two chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. When we tie them both together, it's what we call Congress. All right, the House and the Senate together is what we call Congress. And as we said just a minute ago, the House of Representatives has 435 members from 50 different states. This is usually broken up into districts, which is determined by the census every 10 years. And the number of the House depends on how many people live or population of each state. So, for example, all right, again, in the House of Representatives, if you wanted to basically kind of look at this, and I'll kind of help you guys out so you can see it without too many issues there. In Tennessee, we actually have 9 members of the House. In California, they have 55. Why does California have 55 and Tennessee only have 9? Because they have they have over 5 times as many people that live there than we do. So this is all based on population size and everything else that happens afterwards. All right. So in this particular assignment, what you guys are going to do, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently because it says circle. I'm going to make this a little bit easier so you guys can kind of just draw and highlight our areas. So what you're trying to find here, okay, in this particular map is where Tennessee is. You can notice there's Texas, and this have all the seats. Guys, this is an actual map of all the seats that are laid out in the House of Representatives meeting room in Washington, D.C. It's what's called the Capitol. So the goal here is to find Tennessee and highlight all those other different areas, okay, that you kind of have. So like right here, this is Tennessee and what it's basically made up of, okay, and I'm just going to highlight that particular section. You can notice it goes top to bottom. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's Tennessee right there in this yellow line, okay? If you wanted to go up and say, look at, Georgia. Georgia over here has 14. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That would be Georgia and their particular stuff that goes along with it at the same time. So in this section, all you need to do is highlight or basically color in. You could even just do this, if you wanted to color in the dots, which would probably be easier for you guys just to do this. So I'm going to color in the Tennessee dots as well. So just dot in those particular sections right there. Alright, so you've got all these different kinds of things that go along with it without too many issues there. So there's Tennessee and R9 that go along with it. So what does it mean to have to be a part of one of these chambers? The House of Representatives, you got to be 25 years old. You have to be a citizen for at least 7 years, and that is basically the qualifications. You have to be 25, a citizen for 7 years, and you have to live in the area that you are representing. That is it. You can see here's a picture of the House of Representatives meeting area that they have with all the different seats up top. These are just the bystanders that are watching. There's that nice little bend, kind of half horseshoe look that you guys saw at the same time as far as that stuff goes. Okay, so 25, citizen for 7 years. The Senate has just 100. It's 2 from each state. Okay, it has nothing to do with population size or anything else. 2 people represent the entire state for all 50. All right, it's basically designed to figure out what goes into it, and what you had here is a lot of different things where the senators were first appointed by originally state legislatures. There was no vote, but then the 17th Amendment changed that to say, hey, we can vote on who represents the entire state. So originally, when this first started, for the first few decades of the United States, the local governors and different people were picking who were going to be our senators. Now the people get to vote after what's called the 17th Amendment. So this one, guys, is the idea of, if the citizens now vote for the senators, do senators really represent their states, or do they represent the citizens? This is a big deal with the 17th Amendment, because you're trying to represent the state, and I just wanted to kind of see what you think. Senators are not representing people or counties or cities. They're representing the entire state. But if people vote on them, are they really representing the state, or just a majority of people? That's the issue. A lot of different areas. What do you have to be a senator? Add on 5 more years of living and 2 more years of a citizen. 30 years old, 9 years to be a senator, and you have to live in the state you're representing. That is it to be a senator for the United States of America. How long do you get to keep this job, guys? The word term means how long somebody gets guaranteed to keep this before an election. Members of the House have 2 years. Members of the Senate have the longest guaranteed job in this, 6 years. There is no limit to how many times these people can get reelected. So you can be reelected until someone basically no longer wants to run or no longer can run. Okay, so every 2 years every 2 years the House of Representatives has an election. Every 6 years, the Senate is up for reelection. And the reason we did it at 6 is you're not going to vote for both senators at the exact same time. You only vote for one senator every other election. So that's a way to guarantee. The President of the United States is not like this, meaning he can only serve, or they can only serve, 2 terms. Should members of the House and the Senate have limits? Should there be limits to how long somebody can serve in a member of Congress, or as a member of Congress? And this is where we just kind of wanted your opinion, just to see. Do you think somebody else needs a chance, or we just keep the same people over and over because they have the experience? So what is the job of these members of Congress that make up the legislative branch? Okay, the Congress's main job is to make laws. However, they cannot make laws on anything it wants. Congress is limited under the Constitution to make laws that are enumerated or limited powers. They only have certain things they can make laws about. Okay, so Congress can make laws on borrowing, spending money, trade with other countries, post office, going to war, creating an army, or actually just making money. This is the stuff that's literally written out in the Constitution word for word. It literally says this is what this Congress is allowed to do. The implied powers are things that are not written word for word, but they are interpreted in here. An example would be they can make all things that are necessary and proper. Basically, Congress is allowed to create a law that at any point they deem it necessary and proper, they can make a law doing so. So this is where you see a lot of different things that basically happen in a lot of different time. All right? So you see a lot of different questions and a lot of different things that happen at this point. So what is it, the main thing that they do? The main thing that they do here in the United States of America is they actually, like I said, create laws. Okay? So they create laws that pass in the United States. And before we jump into this in different ways, shapes, and forms, you have this process of making a bill into a law. We'll talk about that process as well, at least at another different time. Okay? So we'll kind of just go through this, and we'll talk about bills and the laws another day, at least at another different time. All right? So can Congress do whatever they want? No, not necessarily, because again, Congress and the legislative branch is always a part of the checks and balances system. The main limitation on Congress can be the executive branch, where the president can veto things. The judicial branch can create law and court cases that overrule any laws that Congress creates. So again, the main job of Congress and the legislative branch is to make the new laws and the new rules. They do all different kinds of things where they approve judges and do all this other different kinds of stuff. So again, remember guys, Congress and the legislative branch is made up of two groups, the House of Representatives and the Senate. In the House, you got to be 25 with a 7-year citizenship, 2-year guaranteed gig or a term. Senators are 30, have to be a citizen for 9 years, and get a 6-year guaranteed job for their term as well. All right. And so again, guys, this is the biggest thing to make sure and look at. Congress is made up of both the House and the Senate. They pass bills and create new laws at the exact same time. And so again, guys, that's the basis idea of what we call the legislative branch of the United States of America, aka Congress.